Welcome back to the One Trail at a Time podcast. I am your host, Boogie. Today we're going to be talking about tent versus hammock. Which one is the right one for you? Now, personally, I can't answer that question for you. The only thing that I can do is kind of get some information out there, and you have to make the decision for yourself. But I'm willing to go on that journey with you. You know, the metaphoric jump over that mountain or go over the cliff, you know. So right now, I kind of went over on the first episode that I'm all about hammock camping. Not that I have anything against tents, but I'm all about hammock camping right now. That's just my lifestyle choice. But everything has its pros and cons, and I guess you really have to figure out what is your pro, what is your con, and how it kind of benefits you in the style and your comfort level. So let me give you my backstory on why I started hammock camping. I found that it was a lot more comfortable for me to sleep at night. Okay, now I'm going to start right. I know you're supposed to kind of build up and, you know, you're supposed to build up and then hit people with the cons so you can kind of sell them on it. Well, overall, a hammock setup is heavier than a tent setup, but I am willing to carry that extra weight for comfort. That's me. But let's jump into how I arrived at this point. So if you are willing and able to throw some dollars at tent camping, then you can get pretty how can I get that out there? If you have the funds to throw at some tents, I'm not going to get into brands, but there are some lightweight tents out there from some lightweight single wall tents that are made out of nylon, and also ones that are made out of Dyneema, or it was also known as Cuban fiber. That's going to be your lightest material. Okay. And with that being said, those are just the things you have to weigh into it. So you can find a tent that weighs about a pound. Okay, you have a tent that weighs a pound. You get your sleeping bag. If it's synthetic, of course, it's going to weigh more. If you go down, that's going to weigh significantly less. For the same R value, you can get a down sleeping bag that's going to weigh less, and then you get into your sleep mats and sleep pads. Depending on what season you're in, you may need a combination of them both. But your typical hammock for a single layer hammock is going to hit you for at least 2 pounds. Depending on your weight class, I am sitting at 225. I need a hammock that's going to support that, and right now those come in at around a pound and a half. Once you get into the suspension and you get into everything, once you get into the suspension, the ridge line, my hammock itself, before you get into the tarp, is sitting at a rate around 3.5 pounds or so. That was the last time I checked, and it was dry, I believe. But it was sitting at about 3.5 pounds when it was all said and done. The top, with my top quilt and under quilt, I'm sitting at about 2.5 pounds. For reference, I'm using the hammock gear under quilt and top quilt is the burl and I can't think of the name of the of the underquilt, the incubator. So I'm using the incubator and a burrow, both 40 degree. Said before, I do 3-season camping as of right now. If I jump into that 4th season, either I have to add a wool blanket to that with a sleep mat, my insulated sleep mat, or I jump into my synthetic things. All right. So the weight difference, when you turn to the tent you can get, like I was saying, as little as a pound. You have a 8-ounce, 16. Well, your average sleeping pad is going to weigh about a pound. So you have a pound for a sleeping bag. I mean, you have a pound for your sleep mat, a pound for the tent, and right around a pound for your sleeping bag if you're jumping into down. Now, when you throw those numbers out there, or say a pound and a half for your sleeping bag, you throw those numbers out there, you're at 3.5 pounds. That is the total weight of my, not yours if you already do hammocks, but that is the weight of my hammock ridgeline suspension. Okay? So when you look at it that route, and I haven't even gotten to my installation yet in the tarp, so I'm just throwing it out there that, a tent does seem pretty great when it comes down to weight. And with a tent, you can put yourself in some fairly decent situations. And these fairly decent situations that I speak of is when you are in a desert or you have some flat land. You can set up your tent and be really, really comfortable. Now, those are the pros to tent camping. Everything else is kind of subjective. People like tents because they say it gives them more privacy when it comes down to changing. I'm in nature, and I really have no shame. So changing out in the open isn't one thing that I am concerned with. That's all I'm going to say about that. But when it comes down to hammock camping, my personal preference is that if I sleep on the ground, I tend to wake up really stuffy, and I don't enjoy that. And my back tends to hurt a little more. I get a really comfortable sleep, especially if on a day that I put a lot of miles in. Lately, I've been on my bike. Bike kind of beats you up, depending on the trail that you're on. You kind of get beat up doing that. So a good night's sleep is one thing that I really, really look forward to when I get to my campsite. So the extra weight that comes from that really helps out. Now, let's look at, there are things, I kind of pooped on the hammock in the beginning because of weight. But we come around to the fact to why I like it so much. Now, have I always found the perfect trees that gave me the right hang? Well, no. I didn't always find the right trees to do it, but I've been in some great locations, and the ridge line gave me the perfect lay that I needed. It gave the right pitch for what I needed. I was able to not have to worry about laying down on the ground and something poking through the bottom of my tent and poking a hole in my sleep mat. I didn't have to worry about the ground being totally even when I'm in my hammock. There are so many benefits to it. Oh, also the number one reason is most definitely being able to be off the ground when I sleep. But the number two reason, the hammock actually works as a nice chair slash swing. So I don't really need a seat when I go to camp when I have a hammock, because I can sit in my hammock and be off the ground and be relatively comfortable. So doesn't work well when you're trying to cook, but overall, sitting in your hammock is, to me, it gives the most versatility out in the middle of nowhere, or when you're at your campsite just kind of doing your thing. When it comes down to rough weather, which one is better? I don't know. Both of them have their downsides. Personally, from my first camping trip, I know how it feels to be in a rainy situation. It rained on me for 2 days. And in that tent, it was somewhat okay, but I was on the ground, literally on the ground for 2 days. And I have been in rough weather in a hammock. At least I was able to sit up a little more. I can't really say which one I enjoyed more. They pretty much sucked around the same if you got to be in there for an extended period of time. Bedding, so far I have been in the cold, in a hammock and in a tent. Personally, everything about a tent, besides the weight aspect of it, I have been more comfortable in every situation. Bad weather, when it's just cold, when it's hot, a hammock has worked better for me as of now. But when I take my trips to Arizona, California, in areas where I'm really not familiar with the terrain, I more than likely will feel much better carrying a tent with me than taking the hammock, just because there's a good chance I can always find some ground when I'm hiking. I may not be able, especially in the desert, I may not be able to find the trees that I need to go to sleep. Am I willing to just pull the tarp out and sleep under the tarp? I can do it. Am I definitely afraid of being bitten by snakes? Yeah, betcha. So, though there's not a whole lot of material surrounding you in either setup, I want to have a little material around me in a setup. And there are some guys out there that sleep only under a tarp, and I salute you. I am not there yet. So when I do get there, maybe I'll give you some credit for it. I have no clue, but to me, both of these setups have their pros and cons. If I can get away with a hammock, I would prefer that. Though there have been so many people that have watched my videos that say, "Hey, you're doing bikepacking, you should really invest in a tent." But they never really said why I should invest in a tent. They just said, "This is I bike pack, and I do it with a tent. It's easier." I guess they did give me a reason, but they just said that it's easier. Maybe I'm supposed, I really haven't put the miles on my bike like they've put on theirs, and they may end up in some spots where they're doing some stealth stuff. And if that's what it is, I totally dig it. Now, going further on this journey into the podcast situation, things that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be opening up a phone line so people can call in and kind of comment on how they do things and give me suggestions of different setups I can be using and things that I can fix, and also their experiences, their places where they have gone to take their last trips that they're planning on, and things that maybe I would enjoy that they have gone through. Also, hey, share your stories. But that's going to be coming around in the next couple of episodes. But for now, we have made it to the end of the trail. I'm going to catch you guys the next time on the next episode. Thanks again for joining me on episode 2 of One Trail at a Time. I'm Boogie, and I'm out.